And good afternoon, everybody. This is Marcus Hanscom, your online education chair for NAGAP, and I'm joined today with Linda Horisk from our conference committees from Fordham University. And we're thrilled to have you join us. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to learn a little bit more about what the proposal process is like for our annual conference. And of course, our next annual conference is in April in San Diego. So those of us here on the East Coast are excited to get down to sunny San Diego in April, so we're looking forward to that. And I really want to thank Linda for all of her hard work in putting this all together. Most of the content you'll see here today she had put together for us and has really worked hard along with our conference committee and in tandem with our board and our education committee in really developing how the proposal process and the various topics and things will be created for this conference. So really a lot of diligent effort was made in making sure this will be a successful conference, and we're really excited to have you all join us on board with this for next year. So you know a little bit about us, and we're going to talk to you a little bit more about the conference itself and what to expect for next year. We're also going to discuss a little bit about the format of the actual proposal process. If you haven't done this before, it's a relatively straightforward process, but we want to make sure we go over each piece of that for you and what we're looking for you to provide to us in the early stages so that we can make a really good estimate of how your presentation will fit into our conference in April. Also talk about some of the various session formats. We have 4 different formats that Linda will discuss for you. Also discuss a little bit about what it's like to build a topic and what kinds of things we're looking for and how to optimize that topic for our various audiences, because in GEM now we're encompassing a lot of different folks and what they're doing. And then we'll close up with some final thoughts and things and take any questions that you have. Now, as you go through the webinar today, if you have any questions at all, feel free to enter them. You'll see on the right-hand side there is a questions box. So just enter your question in there, and we'll be happy to answer it either during the session or at the very end of the webinar. So we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So here's your first important information. Obviously, save the date. It's April 30th through May 3rd, 2014 in San Diego. Boy, time is flying. And our conference title and theme, this is something that actually I was very pleasantly surprised. It's my first year on the board. And I was very surprised and pleased to see the amount of effort that goes into all these various efforts that we have with the conference and webinars and our PDIs and all the various events and sessions that we put on for you, how much time and effort is put into making sure that they're right and they're good and they're really serving our audience. So a lot of time and a lot of email chains went back and forth with the board and our education and conference committees about this year's theme. So we finally settled on managing change in graduate enrollment management, navigating uncharted territory. And we're really trying to build upon our theme from last year now that we've spent a lot of time redefining GEM, but now moving forward, how do we really get our campuses on board with that idea of GEM and really navigating that new territory that we haven't been in before, and really kind of talking about organizationally, what does that mean for us, what types of topics do we have to hit on, and the various facets of graduate enrollment management and how we can best serve our members. So you should have received in your email a call for proposals last week. And that proposal is due by September 27th. So we do that so that we have enough time to review all of the proposals and give, of course, the fair assessment of all of those proposals to make sure we get the right ones selected for our conference. So please do submit that on the pre-sys site by September 27th. That uses your login for your NAGAP membership, so be sure to have that handy, your NAGAP ID if you don't have it. And you also must register for the conference once registration opens. So be sure to keep an eye out for that when we open up registration and make sure you get your name in there and get all registered so that you can come to the conference. Of course, we wouldn't want you to not be there if you had an opportunity to present, so make sure you register for the conference as soon as that becomes available. Now, when we have education sessions at the conference, and for those of you who have been to NAGAP before, and for me it's one of the singular most beneficial things that I do throughout the year is to go to the conference and be involved with all these folks. I've made some of the greatest friends and what I would consider family in my life by going to the annual conference and, of course, becoming involved with the board and the various committees. But this is really something that we hope that you get great benefit on and something that you can take back and apply to your work right after you go to the conference. So when you're considering your proposals, try to think in terms of that managing change in GEM, that theme that we discussed with you on the previous slide, that it's really kind of critical to, you don't have to do something specific to that theme, but we like to try to keep things generally involved with that theme so that the whole theme of the conference is really aimed at managing change in GEM and the various types of things that we're doing. So focus on those changes in the market and managing and adapting to those, and how our institutions must be nimble in doing that. Also consider our work environments, our job requirements, and for many of us, job requirements may be changing as we redefine GEM. And there are 8 categories that we'll be discussing with you, and Linda will talk to you about those in a moment, of what we try to have you kind of fit your presentation into a general category so that people know when they're going, if they're, are they looking at a legal session or something regarding to leadership or marketing. So there's various topic categories for you. They're based on a variety of research that we've done. We actually have had education summits over the past couple of years. I'll talk to you about those in a moment. We've also looked at member feedback and things. So a lot of work and effort goes into selecting these various categories and giving you guidance on the type of topics that we're looking for. And you can choose a topic of choice as long as it relates into one of those general categories. So it's a very broad list of categories you'll find, so you'll see that in the coming slides. So when we go for the call for proposals, when we create this is, and again, being my first year on the board, I wasn't sure what really went into that process, but now that I've seen it from the back end, I've been really impressed at the amount of work that goes in terms of data analysis and looking at every conference evaluation, looking at anecdotal feedback that people provided through email or that have written to us or have stopped us at a fair and talked to us about, looking at survey results from our webinars, looking at best practices in the industry, also looking at articles and various things that are coming out from Council of Graduate Schools and various other partnering organizations. There's so much that we delved through these education summits, and I was directly involved with this process, and it was a grueling couple of days where we went through all of the various feedback and then used that to really identify the key categories that our members are really going to be interested in moving forward and what will make them successful in GEM. So that's really critical, and there's a lot of work that went into this. So it wasn't just us sitting around the table and saying, oh, let's see, that might be nice to cover. We really took a lot of effort and looked at all the feedback from our members to make sure we're serving you and not serving our interests. It's serving the best of the entire membership, and that's really critical to what we're doing within NAGAP. We've also spent a lot of time defining GEM, as you know. Our research committee has spent a lot of time with that in addition to our education committee and, of course, our conference committee. And then our board has realigned in what, as you know, NAGAP has kind of rebranded along the graduate enrollment management line. So all of these initiatives and goals are part of that greater GEM process. And our research committee in particular is moving forward and continuing to define what GEM really is based on feedback and survey results they're doing throughout the industry. So it's really critical to what we're doing, and we're hoping that that focus really carries through into the conference, and it's really informed the various categories and topics that we've developed. We're really, what our goals have been, and we have another education summit coming up in the fall, is that we're bringing folks together from our various committees to determine how we can develop the ideal GEM professional. So for you, and you know, I'm a younger professional in the field, and I want to make sure that I have the right skills to grow in the field. And for various people, especially if you're a second career and you're coming from somewhere outside of graduate enrollment management, we want to make sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to gain the requisite skills to grow in the GEM field. So we've really been identifying what those skills are and how we can use our various conferences and PDIs and sessions and receptions and things and webinars to really build those skill sets for you so that eventually you can say, I've done all of this learning and knowledge gathering through these various opportunities through NAGAP to grow as an ideal GEM professional, and that's our ultimate goal for you. So we're really hopeful that what we're doing here and beyond will really serve you in that regard. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Linda and have her discuss the categories and things for you.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. And so I'm going to pick up here after Marcus's introduction with talking to you just a little bit about the topics for our educational sessions. I'm sorry, these are the categories. And then for each of the categories we have on the website, you'll be able to see and in precis some of the different topics that we've identified as well. And as Marcus mentioned before, the theme of the conference has changed. So just in looking at what some of these categories are here, thinking about, for example, let's take a look at the one on financial aid, if you were considering presenting on a topic like that. So the that was then part of financial aid might have been, well, how can we provide more information to our prospective students and our new students about financial aid? What's the best way to do that? Whereas now we're more focused on what are alternative means of funding? How can we help our students take care of their, the rising debt crisis. May have been based on some of their undergraduate loans, and now they're in graduate school. How do we help them to manage that? And also looking forward to how are we managing the satisfactory academic progress requirements that we have now from the government. So I think that just using that as an example, you can see how the job requirements of people in GEM and graduate enrollment management have changed just in that one topic there of financial aid. So we're very anxious to hear what schools are doing about that. Okay, and so just in going through some of the other topics here, the first one there, adapting to 21st century learners and the marketplace. We're very interested in hearing from you about, how has your work changed in your work as a graduate enrollment professional? How has that been affected by the job market, by the change in careers? And then what are the implications for programs? How involved are you in giving input to your schools about programs based on what you know about the marketplace? Another important topic, obviously, in that category would be the implications and the impact of MOOCs. We had a very well-received presentation at our conference last year in April in Orlando on that topic, and we're looking for some more people to step forward. Admissions and enrollment, that's pretty much one of our standard year after year. We have so many people interested in this topic, so we want to make sure that we're giving it its due. So we're looking for proposals dealing with best practices using technology, online application, online review, document scanning, and data-driven decision making. And again, remember that the guidelines we're giving you for topics under the categories are suggestions. Any new ideas in any of these areas would definitely be welcomed. Career, staff, and personal development. We're looking for people to come forward and to present or have a panel discussion on change theory and how we can help people in GEM in dealing, those in leadership positions, with some of these changes. Hang on. Excuse me. Of course, compliance, legal, and ethical issues, that's always something that we're faced with in GEM. Sorry, I have a little tickle going on here in the throat. And so every year we'd like to have presentations around these topics. And of course, one of the important things that we're looking for here, besides legal issues during the application process, will be what is the involvement of GEM professionals in some of the data collection requirements and the reporting that many of us are faced with now with different accrediting agencies as well as with state and federal governments. We no longer have just a particular category dealing with recruiting international students. What we have found through all of our research and our surveys, and just from the state of graduate admissions, and that it's really more of a globalization now, having to do and deal with and understand a new generation of international as well as multicultural domestic students. So how are we changing what we're doing in GEM as far as the admissions process is concerned, but also new student orientation and student services and retention are all folded into that whole area. Many schools have jumped on board because of economic reasons and trying to jump on board with, okay, so if we're not getting in as many domestic students, how can we go out and recruit international students? But how are we also, beyond trying to meet enrollment numbers, how are we providing the infrastructure for bringing in international and multicultural domestic students in the way of services, and also training for faculty and staff on cultural differences and diversity to make sure that we're meeting the needs. So I think that you can see so far from some of the examples I'm giving, some of the things that we are looking for, and we're hoping that some of you are going to step forward and share your best knowledge, your experience, your expertise, and even some of the best practices that you might be experimenting with at this point to help your colleagues from around the country and in Canada. All right, of course, the graduate student funding and financial aid we talked about earlier. But marketing and enrollment management, what are the kinds of things that are changing in that field? And so what are some best practices that you've developed where you're using market research, you're analyzing your own marketing and recruitment data, and then you're determining the best next step for your particular school, for your programs, for your university. Another thing that we're hoping that someone has some knowledge about is what can we learn from the for-profits? What are some of their best business or their business practices that seem to be working for them, or even among our undergrad institutions, with schools within our own schools? What works for them that maybe we can look at and borrow from to make our lives a little bit easier and to help it to increase our yield as well? And then finally, the last category, the student life cycle in a graduate enrollment management model. We hear a lot about that at the undergraduate level, but it's time for NAGAP and for our membership to really take a look at what that looks like and how is that different for our adult learners and those students who come to us as graduate students. And so a lot of emphasis right now, both at the undergrad and at the graduate level, in taking a look at retention. We had some presentations on that last year. Some of the chapters are focusing on this right now, the special interest groups. And so we're looking for people to share with us at our conference next April on some of the things that they're doing in this area as well. And then, of course, another example might be how are we serving special populations, be it international, diversity, students with disabilities, or veterans that are coming into our schools as well. Next slide, Marcus. And so you do have options for different types of what we call for our conferences education sessions. So your 4 options for how you will share your knowledge would be presentation, which generally would be lecture-style format, seating in the room that you're using. 1 or more presenters can be used. Generally, we would like for you to present some data. You might present an idea, but okay, and here's how this idea worked in my school, and maybe have some data to support that. What are your best practices? Those kinds of things really do seem to go over well with our attendees. But the main challenge that you will have when you actually create the presentation itself will be, how am I going to make this meaningful for the learners? What do I want people to take away from my session? And so that will be an important piece for you. So when you're thinking about what session you're going to do, probably better for you to think what topic it is, what category you're going to choose. And so that when you're kind of going from conceptual idea, don't wrap yourself around or don't commit to a session style, but rather, what is going to be my topic? That's how you go from conceptual idea to the actual proposal, because you want to think about what it is that you're going to be sharing, and then what would be the best learning style format for what it is that you want to share. A panel discussion you should probably, if you're going to choose this one, really not have more than, let's say, 3 panelists and a moderator. And we want panel discussions to be just that. You want it to be a discussion. And so the moderator would be charged with asking pithy, essential questions, probing questions of the panelists around a particular topic. A panel discussion is not each person on the panel sharing something, you move down the line, and then you have question and answer. That would be pretty much, those were pretty much our reasons for bringing on board last year what we call a rapid fire session. That is where you might have a central theme or topic. Let's say it's managing change in GEM, and then you have 3 people, 4 people who speak about it, each for approximately 10 minutes, and then you would have a moderator, and then have questions. So here's your theme. Here's 3 different people sharing with you what they did in their schools. That is the rapid fire session. And then the special interest session would be your other choice. And every year, on every evaluation that we do, everybody we talk to, whether it's the chapter, the special interest groups, or at our national conference, we want more time together. We want to be able to talk to colleagues. We want to be able to network. So although NAGAP does a fantastic job, of course, with our with our receptions and our off-sites to give people a chance to network. Bringing them together in a special interest session is another way of doing that. You're networking, you're finding out what other people think about particular ideas. And so this special interest session type format would entail you bringing forward maybe one or two people to facilitate table groups around particular topics and allowing the table groups time to talk to one another, and then have report outs as well. Next slide. And so just a quick overview of the application, the actual proposal. You will be in our online submission system, which is called Presys. You will have to put in some personal info as well as a bio for you and other participants as well. I mean, there are character limits for these, and within the proposal form, we do give you an example of a bio. And then we do ask about your presentation experience. And this is something that we've added new for this year. It hasn't been done in the past. We want to know if you've presented on this topic before. If so, where? Or any other presentation experience that you have had, or what it is about you where you're showing us that you have the expertise in this particular area. We think that it is our obligation to our membership to make sure that the people who are presenting have the expertise. But we, on the other hand, want to be very, very clear in our messaging as well as in our encouragement of people who are new to GEM, because we want them to come forward and be presenters and to do panel discussions or rapid fire or special interest groups as well. So anything that you can provide in the questions that are asked of you within the proposal application to give the evaluators a better idea, that would be very, very helpful to us. Another thing, of course, that you'll be asked will be the session type. And I just explained all of the types. And so for each type, when you click on it, you will get a description of it as well, and that is also located on the website. You'll be asked about your audience level. And so our levels are entry level, so you would be preparing to present or have a panel for people with fewer than 2 years of experience, intermediate at 2 to 5 years of experience, advanced more than 5, or if you think that what you're going to do appeals to all levels, you can indicate that as well. An abstract is required. That is pretty much an overview of what your education session would be about. And for that one, you have 2,000 characters that you can use for your abstract, keeping in mind that your abstract is also going to be what appears in the actual program. So that's what people are going to read about when they make their decisions about which education sessions they'll attend. You will also have to provide learning objectives, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. An outline of what you're going to be discussing or sharing. Questions, if you're doing a panel discussion, we would want to know what are going to be the questions that you're going to be asking of the panel. And then we're asking you also to consider collaborating with others in developing a proposal and to present or have a panel or whichever session you choose, but to do that with some of your colleagues. And then we also ask you a question within the application. Would you be interested in doing a 2-hour presentation instead of our regular time slot, which is about an hour? Last year we piloted some 2-hour sessions. We evaluated or really reviewed the evaluations of those and are also wondering this year if maybe other people might want to do this. What we would do is we're asking you if you're interested. If you say yes, we're going to look at those and then kind of look at the balance of the different categories, because that's something that the reviewers are very cognizant of when we're making our decisions. And then we might be reaching out to people who might be interested in doing a 2-hour session. Next slide. And so we would encourage you to consider collaborating on a proposal. And so you're probably sitting there in your offices right now alone thinking, well, how in the heck am I going to do this? And so these are just some avenues that you might, travel down as you do your outreach. If you are on Facebook, there is a fan page for NAGAP, and you could post something there. please use, we are on LinkedIn, you can use Twitter or any other social media. Just put a message out there that you're looking to present or do something at NAGAP on XYZ topic, and people will respond to you. If you're in a chapter or a special interest group, you might want to network through those groups. Any professional listservs that you are on, you can ask for recommendations also. In years past, well, this is my third year of being on the committee doing the education chair work for the conference committee, and people would contact me, and then if something came up or as I'm looking at proposals as they're coming in, I tried to connect people with one another also, and in some cases that was very successful, and some really good proposals and sessions came out of that. And then another thing that you might want to do is to research past NAGAP presentations and publications that we've had, and you probably just received in the mail yesterday the new issue of Perspectives magazine. So most of the ed sessions from last year's conference in Orlando are described in there. There are synopses of those, so you might want to look. You might see someone there. Look at past issues of Perspective, somebody who wrote an article, maybe somebody who got an award, or somebody is mentioned, and it just will give you other ideas on people to whom you can reach out. Next slide. And so the learning objectives, and that's something that's a very important part of your proposal. And we've done a lot of work on this part of the proposal application over the last 2 years. And so we're asking that you write your learning objectives according to the guidelines here. Keep them clear, concise, easy to understand, and they should all be actionable and start with an action verb. And we give you a list of those as well. We want you to reinforce your learning objectives with some kind of data, either that you're going to be sharing or presenting. And keep in mind that when you think about creating your proposal, what we would challenge you to do is to kind of think with the end in mind. In educator and teaching and learning terms, we call this backwards design. So what do I want the participants in my session to know and be able to do when they're finished? So if I'm doing something on how to create a new online application, an online review, I want to be able to present something that my participants, how are they going to put this into action? So one of the things, my goals for my session might be, by the end of my session, what I want them to do is to be able to create the communication plan in a CRM versus a very more concrete kind of a thing. I would like them to be able to list the characteristics of the best type of communication plan. So with that in mind, now I go backwards. This is what I want them to know and be able to do. So how am I going to best present that or have a panel about it? What are the questions? What's the data that I'm going to present? What are the best practices that I'm going to show them? So I'll ask you now, I know you can't answer me verbally, but how is that different from going into this from the perspective of, I know I want to do a presentation, and here's what I want to share. This is all the information. And so the challenge then is, what do I want to be the takeaways? What do I want people to learn? What I want them to be able to put into practice after they go? The best part about a conference is going and learning something new and putting it into action. So those would be your outcomes. And so just some examples here of some learning objectives that I actually took from ones that were used in the past. Evaluate social media tools. Explore how MOOCs will impact the work of GEM professionals. Do you notice how the learning objectives that we have here as examples, this is more what your learners, the people in your participants, are going to be doing, not a learning objective as some have been put into proposals before, what you, the presenter, or you, the panelist, are going to be doing. I will show participants how to. No. What will the participants take out of it? So I'm hoping that you see the difference here. You'll see that these all start with action verbs. These are more higher level learning objectives. We base these all on Bloom's taxonomy. And then that higher level learning of asking people, how are you going to evaluate? how you're going to explore, compare and contrast, analyze. So it's a much higher level of thinking and preparation, yes, for you when you're going into this, but it's going to benefit our membership very, very well. Next slide. And so you're thinking, okay, so this seems like a lot of work. How am I going to be evaluated? And so one of the most important things that you will look at within the application, the proposal application, is the rubric. And so last year we piloted rubrics for the evaluation, and this year we're going forward again after some tweaking. And so you will find rubrics for all of the education sessions within PRESYS. You'll be able to see those. And so then what you do is you let that rubric be your guide for creating the proposal and for working on your presentation or your panel once your proposal is accepted. We will be looking at experience of the submitters. That is part of the rubric. Please keep in mind, as I mentioned before, that proposals are open to any level of experience and expertise, and so we're really hoping that even people who are new to the profession would be submitting as well. And so the rubrics have 4 topics, and they all will be rated on a 1.5 scale, 1 to 5 scale. The topics are currency, importance, and appropriateness of the topic, purpose, outcomes, your learning objectives, what do you want your participants to know and be able to do and to employ in their GEM practice, and then presenter qualifications. So what we're going to do right now is to take a look at a level 5, which is the highest level of each of the categories. Oh, I guess we're not going to do that just yet. First of all, the timeline for the proposals and the evaluation, your deadline, September 17th, October to November, that's when we will be working on the evaluations. December is usually when we send out the notification to the submitters and to see who's accepted. And then, as Marcus mentioned before, the evaluations are all done by the conference chair. This year, our conference chair is Tisha Johnson from Illinois College of Optometry. I'm the conference education chair. Our education committee chair is Dave Fletcher from Barry University in Florida. And then the education committee will be involved in this also. And there are about 13 of us on that committee. Next slide. Okay, now this is what the rubric would look like for the first strand of evaluation, which is currency, importance, and relevancy of the topic that you choose within one of our categories. And so let's look at what a level 5 is. I'll give you a moment just to take a look at that. What we're looking for here, obviously, is relevancy. Is the topic that you're going to be presenting on have something in it that is cutting edge, that's really going to have the appeal to our membership? What's going to be their significant impact, and what are members going to be able to take away? So that would be a level 5. And then the purpose outcomes. As you can see here again, the 1 to 5 rating. We're trying to be very systematic, but also be able to have a variety of opinions, obviously, of the evaluators. And so a level 5, we're looking that your learning objectives and intended outcomes support the conference topics, and that you are going to be sure that you are indicating what will be the takeaways. Again, thinking back to what I described a few moments ago about what are those takeaways, what's that new learning that can be used by our GEM colleagues. Next. And so your title and your abstract. Now you don't have much space for your abstract. There isn't any characters. As I mentioned before, it's 2,000 characters, and that abstract will go into the program. We want it to be well defined. Sometimes there are some catchy little phrases and sentences and questions that are posed within the abstract. That is okay, but don't let it distract from you putting forward what this session is going to be about. So my guess would be that you would avoid, do you want to learn more about enrollment management? But rather, would you like to learn about XYZ and how it affects enrollment management? That way you're beginning to paint a picture in the minds of people as they're reading over these abstracts and they're trying to figure out, well, which of these sessions am I going to attend? It also gives the evaluators of the proposal a much better idea of what it is that you are going to be helping to present. Notice I avoid trying to say the word cover, what you're going to cover in your presentation, because what we want is for you to share data, share information, and have your participants uncover how they're going to use it in their work. Next. And then finally, the qualifications of the presenters. And so if we could look at a 5 rating on that, Marcus. Okay, so this would be a 5 rating. Presenter qualification would ensure an extremely positive experience. The presenter is knowledgeable, a high level of expertise, and if the presenter has presented before. And this is why we ask the questions within another section of the application so that we can get a little bit more information about that. Okay? And now Marcus is going to come back and kind of sum things up for you.
All right, so some final thoughts. Obviously, Linda's thrown a lot at you, and there's a lot to think about here. And just so you all know, we will post the recording of this entire session on YouTube shortly following the session, so you can check it up there if you'd like. But one thing that has been really critical to successful sessions over the past few years in particular is that there are actionable takeaways for your audience. Now, these aren't required that you submit them during the proposal process, so don't worry about necessarily ironing these out now. But I know Linda and I have both presented a number of times in the past, and I find that it's very helpful to know what those takeaways are going to be now, so that when I'm going to prepare my final presentation, I know what those outcomes are going to be. And Linda talked to you about learning objectives. There are the objectives that are kind of the upper level 30,000-foot view on, you know, growing your graduate enrollment using social media or something. But then there'd be something like a takeaway where you might say, okay, go create a tangible plan for posting on Facebook, for instance. Or, and you see there's a number of things here. Review your Google Analytics to determine next steps for recruitment. Identify strengths or weaknesses by taking a leadership assessment test. We had a number of leadership-oriented sessions last year, including some of the 2-hour sessions that were some of our strongest at the session last year. Create surveys for things to find out about what your students are wanting or what your alumni are doing. Set up a task force. So these things are very tangible things that you can say, okay, I've got a list of things that I want to do, and when I fly back to my campus and I walk on campus on Monday morning and I say to my boss, or the boss asks what did I do, I can say, here are 3 or 4 things that I'm going to do today. I'm going to sit down at my desk and I'm going to do them right now or get them in motion. So the learning objectives are more broad-based in terms of what you'd like your audience to understand, but then you hopefully have some actionable takeaways, or in my case, I use assignments like a teacher. I know Linda can appreciate that from her teaching days. But going in there and telling people, here's your assignment. Go back to your campus and do this. And then I've had a lot of success with people actually contacting me and saying, I actually applied that on my campus, and here's what happened with it. And that can really lead to some really ongoing discussions and maybe even a future session if you do it right. So those are some really helpful things that if you think about now, that'll help in developing your presentation and become more successful later on.
Yeah, and just to add here, Marcus, the example you just gave, you know, someone who comes to the NAGAP conference and then puts into action what they learned and then comes back and they'll do a presentation on it. And we just had that. There had actually been a presentation on doctoral boot camp that was given by Craig Pierce, one of the JGAP schools. And people came back. They tried it. I think it was at University of Austin. They came back to NAGAP a year later with what they had done with what they learned. And so both of those were very well received. So it's great to hear that feedback as well, and that's something that, you know, those of us on the education committee are very interested in, how going forward we can, you know, begin to take a look at how people are actually using what they've learned at our conferences, our PDIs, and in our webinars.
That's great. So it's really critical for those of you who have not presented before, and I want to reiterate something that Linda discussed earlier on. Don't let it detract or not encourage you to apply because you're worried about your experience level in the field. If you're a new or younger professional, I know that can sometimes, especially now that in the rubrics you see that experience is included, that doesn't mean that you can't score well on the other 3 categories that we have, and then you get a mediocre number on that last one. That you can still have a very strong overall evaluation of your proposal, and then we take you, because we want to include people from all experience levels. We want to give everyone the opportunity to present because professionally that gives you a lot of growth opportunities. We do believe very strongly in NAGAP that we're helping grow you as an individual and a professional. So this is very important for you, regardless of your experience level, to consider joining up with us and presenting at the conference. And of course, as Linda mentioned, if you collaborate with a professional, somebody who's been maybe in the field a little bit longer, you're certainly welcome to do that. Or if you're afraid of presenting, I know a lot of people fear presenting in front of groups, then maybe join up with somebody who's seasoned that's willing to do that with you and help you get your feet wet and then grow from there. Or even consider working with our chapters and presenting at a regional conference. So there's a lot of opportunity for you to do this. But there's so much expertise among our colleagues, so be sure to think about what you have to offer, and don't hesitate to offer that as a proposal for the session. And we're happy to help you in any of our committees or board members to help you kind of hone that proposal down to something that's really successful for you. But for you, in terms of growth, by presenting, you're exposing your name and your expertise out to a lot of people. It's something that you can help building your resume. You can highlight your school, which this is a really great sell for your bosses and your boss's bosses if you're trying to go to a conference and justify why you should go to a conference. It's, of course, professional development. You can contribute a lot to your office based on things that you learn at the conference, but then you're highlighting what your institution is doing, so it's good notoriety for your school. And it's really helpful in leveraging that opportunity to come to NAGAP because some folks have difficulty justifying that sometimes, so be sure to include that. If your proposal is accepted, be sure to let people know about it. Include it in your LinkedIn and social media profiles. Ask your supervisor to include it in your annual performance evaluation. I know that's something that I've done personally, and I know other colleagues I know of that have used that. And so that's really helped personally but also professionally in getting the name out there and getting you more opportunities to attend NAGAP or participate in related NAGAP activities. And then if you could, try to get some coverage by your school media. You might have your PR office or even your own office that wants to get information out to your students and let them know, hey, guess what? The guy you've been working with the last 6 months is being recognized nationally or something like that. So make sure that people know about it and leverage that as a way for you to go to the conference. So you may have seen this if any of you have presented before and you came to, Linda and I presented in, I believe it was March, on actually formalizing your presentation to come to the Orlando conference. And this was something that we included. But remember that we work in education. So you want to share your theories, any data, provide opportunities to process and make meaning from that information, and then engage your audience in discussion and give those homework, the takeaway assignments for implementation. So there's really this variety of facets, but we all have so much to offer. And we want you to know that each and every one of you is somebody that we want to include in the conference program in April. So make sure that you submit a proposal if you can, share your expertise. The more expertise we have beyond admissions and recruitment is really critical now that we're really expanding into GEM. I know that my job here is very focused on recruitment and marketing, but I want to know a lot more about what's happening on legal issues and financial aid and student services because our campus is transitioning to a GEM focus. And that's happening in a lot of our campuses, so we could really leverage you and all of your colleagues in the related offices to help present. So, and I'd encourage you, especially if you're working in admissions, call up one of your financial aid folks or call up your student services folks and say, do you mind coming with me and presenting on co-presenting a session on how to best serve students or how to offer financial aid advice? Things like that where you might be able to involve people that have otherwise never been involved with NAGAP before, but we can leverage their expertise because that's extremely valuable to our membership, so we could really use that. So to kind of wrap this up in terms of tips for preparing your proposal for us, consider possible topics based on your strengths and expertise. And like we've discussed many times, we'd be happy to have you collaborate with someone that has additional expertise, and maybe you can build something together that really gets something valuable to our members. Consider the level of your audience. We have a tendency to have our our presenters and all proposals come in and say that this is for all audiences. So, you might say, I'm going to talk about social media, this is for all audiences. The difficulty with that is that sometimes you might put that, but then your presentation might really be geared towards more foundational level topics in, say, social media, versus a 30,000-foot view of how to develop a social media policy and plan, which might attract more, say, director-level folks. So really try to keep in mind your audience and select that audience when you're putting your proposal in so that we can make sure that we're getting enough sessions that really hit each of our audiences and give them the types of content that they need, because a lot of the member feedback has shown that they think that they're getting something because it's all audiences, but then they end up going and it's either too heavy and it's too much, it's more of a director level session, or it's something that's too elementary for the work that they're doing. So make sure you do that accurately. Write your proposal first in the Word document. You'll see on Presys it's actually in, you'll have form boxes there that you're going to be putting text into. So put it into a Word document, proofread it, get input from other folks, and then copy it over into the Presys system so that you can save it there. But definitely get an extra set of eyes on it and look at it outside of the Presys system. Remember that your abstract is the description that will appear in the conference program, as Linda mentioned. So we really like to have something that's catchy, especially a lot of us that are in marketing. We're used to writing copy that's really something that's going to engage people. Think about that description being something that's going to be your 10-second elevator pitch that makes people go, wow, I have to go to that session. So think about that when you're writing your abstract. It's really important. And not only that, it'll help us when we're evaluating your presentation, because I'd love to read a proposal and then go, that abstract sounds fantastic. I'd love to go to that. And if you hook me at the beginning with the abstract, the less I'm going to have to read every little detail of everything else of your presentation. I want to see a really good abstract that shows what you're going to be covering, and then show the data that will back that up to be quality for our presenters. And then in your biography area, you'll cite your background. So really include anything that's relevant to the type of work that you're going to be presenting at the session, any background or any experiences that you've had with that. Even if you've had any kind of recognition, include that there. All of those things are important so that we know what kind of expertise you bring to the table. So at this point, we're going to entertain any questions that you have. We've had a few questions coming in here about emailing the presentation. We'll actually email out probably the YouTube link, and then we could also send out a PDF version of the slides, so we can do that if you'd like. There is a question here. You see our contact, before we get there, our contact information on the screen. So you see my ugly mug and then lovely Linda on the right there. But a couple questions here. The first is, does NAGAP offer financial help for those presenting? Unfortunately not. So we really encourage you, if you can, even if you have to, before you put a proposal in, maybe check with your office or your supervisor to see if it might be an opportunity that you can go if you're accepted. And again, leverage the fact that you're putting a proposal in and that you're hoping to be accepted, and that would be good notoriety for your school and those kinds of things. So unfortunately, we don't have specific financial funding available for presenters at the conference, but we really hope that will not detract you from contributing.
Okay. I'm very intrigued by that question, and I will bring that question to the conference committee also. We haven't been asked that before, but I do know that there are scholarships available to attend our professional development institutes. So I do promise whoever asked that question, if you would like to email me separately, my email address is right there, and I will follow up on that, as perhaps that might be an idea for NAGAP for the future. Thank you.
Okay, next question is, do we have to put the panel together, or will you link us up with others that have the same topic? Linda, I think you can speak to how that process went last time around.
If you are interested in doing a panel and on a particular topic, let me know ahead of time that you might be in need of panelists, and then through your networking and through mine, maybe we can find some people. But we have done that before, where we see that there were some presentations on different topics, or somebody had a panel idea or special interest for them, and we have introduced them to one another. 2 years ago, I think it was, before Austin, we actually did a call for ideas before the conference. And within that, we asked people if they wanted to be connected to other people who were interested in the same topic. And that worked very, very well. So we kind of set the precedent then for trying to connect people. So I'd be more than willing to help you with that. You can just email me separately.
Okay. If you're considering presenting with others, would you recommend that the person with the most experience submit the proposal?
Well, all of the bios are going to be included in the proposal. So if I'm putting in a proposal and I have 3 people with me, I'm going to need all of your information when I'm doing the actual submission of the proposal. So I'm going to need your information, your school, your name, and your bios as well. So that all will be included.
And it looks like we can take any further questions. At the moment, there aren't any. I'm going to just show you quickly the YouTube link to where you can get this video later on. And since there's been a number of requests for the PDF, we'll be happy to send that out to all of you who attended today. But be sure to go to our YouTube channel, and we'll post this to our social media so that you can find it there if you'd like. And certainly encourage any of your colleagues who were unable to make it today to take a look at that video if you can. So it looks like we have all of our questions answered right now. Linda, is there anything else you want to add?
No, I don't think so. Okay. But I would just encourage people to, reach out individually if you have any further questions that I might be able to help you with.
All right, great.
Okay,
well, thank you all thanks so much for joining us. We will be having some more webinars coming up on some other topics. We've got our next webinar for NAGAP will be on the 14th of August, and that'll be with Carnegie Communications on stealth applicants in the graduate cycle. So definitely come and check that one out if you can. Check your email for information. It's also on our website at nagap.org. So thanks so much for your support, and we look forward to hearing from you with all your wonderful proposals, and we'll see you in San Diego.
Enjoy the rest of your summer.